Hello out there in Radio Land. This is Michael. This is Street Preacher's Corner Podcast. The podcast where we do what needs to be done. And man, there are so many things that need to be done. Well, we're trying some things different. We're trying to do some video. And if you can see this, that means it worked. And if you can't, then you did miss out on much. Shooting this or recording this in a space where we are renovating because it was a place where I could get some quiet. The renovation has taken longer than we thought because nobody involved knows what they're doing, especially me. And so we got lights and we got some flooring down and we got some other things going on, a bunch of paint that went on the walls. What we don't have though in this place is the heat. And so that's fun. But it's quiet and it's isolated, and so here we are. Well, today's excursion into what it is we're doing, I started to call this, What About Smoking? And I realized that really is an insufficient title for the larger topic at hand. So when I got saved, I was thinking about this last night. When I got saved, the church I got saved at, Lighthouse Baptist Church in San Diego, way back in the dark ages of 1995, before the internet. That church, it seems to me, like thinking back, that church, and then like the next couple of years going forward at that church, it seemed like people talked a lot about smoking. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe I wasn't a smoker, so it wasn't like something that jumped out at me, like this is about you, Mr. Man there in the chair. But it seems like, and so in that context, I heard a lot of guys say a lot of stupid things that maybe I didn't really appreciate how dumb they were at the time. And I'm sure they meant well. So you had guys say things like, because the question comes up as a young Christian or whatever, the question comes up, is smoking a sin? Right? And so you need to be able to give an answer to that. And what you can't give is a bunch of dumb little cliches and cute little analogies. Coffee. You have to be able to answer people's question. So people would give dumb little cliches and dumb little analogies. So one of the dumb little analogies they would say, well, yeah, you can smoke and still go to heaven, but you got to go to hell first and blow all the smoke out. Now that is dumb on so many levels. And I'll tell you one of them just off the top of my head. You smoke, the smoke goes into your lungs. When you die, those lungs go into a box that they put in the ground. Your lungs don't go to heaven with you when you die. So the idea that you got to go someplace and blow the smoke out, it's just dumb. People would also say, excuse me. I mean, so if you're going to say something like that, you can't expect people to take you seriously. These are people that really want answers to questions about things going on in their life. You can't expect them to take you seriously if you say dumb stuff like that. So you shouldn't say dumb stuff like that. Well, however well-intended you may be, don't say dumb things, okay? Because this doesn't help anybody. People say smoking won't send you to hell, but you'll smell like you've been there. Okay. Once again, okay. Now, I heard a guy say that smoking defiles the temple of God. The Bible says in several places, at least two places, that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. That you, as a saved, born-again believer, you are the temple of God in this time and period in history. And so, and there's a verse in one of the Corinthians, I think, and it talks about how him whom defiles the temple, God will destroy. And so I heard a guy say, he said, lung cancer is God destroying the temple that you defiled. Well, that's better than the other dumb things, but it's not better than the other dumb things in the sense that it's not, okay. If lung cancer was the justice of God retributed upon your body for you defiling it, first of all, you need a verse that says that's how it works, okay? You'd also need to explain to people, or be able to explain to yourself or whoever, you need to explain how, if that's how it worked, then only saved people who smoke would get lung cancer, right? And every saved person that smokes would get lung cancer, right? If that's how it works. We say the wages of sin is death, and we say that that applies to everybody. But when it comes to, I know people that smoked for 40 years and never got sick. I know people that smoked for 25 years and stopped and then got sick. So yeah, it's dumb. And then the idea that you're I don't know uh, with 100% certainty what that verse means when it talks about how God will destroy the people, him that defiles the temple. I don't know what that means. There's not a lot there, at least from my perspective, to glom onto. But I'm not going to say that it's smoking and lung cancer. That's just dumb. Because why would it just be smoking? Why wouldn't it be everything that harms your body? Right? If the sin that you're being punished for, as if Jesus' death on the cross was not enough to cover your sins, you also have to get lung cancer. If that's the punishment for you defiling your body, what about if you went and ate McDonald's every day? What does God do then? See, it doesn't work. And if your theology doesn't work in the real world, then your theology is not true and it's not sound. So you should probably just say and stop saying dumb things. Excuse me. But hey, those guys preached against smoking, and everybody stopped smoking. It's amazing. It's mission accomplished. I will say this though: if you go back and watch old movies or something, you go back and watch old movies, it is kind of remarkable how everybody is smoking in these movies. Like you watch the old detective shows or whatever, the old detective movies, which I like them probably more than I should. But in those, you'll see, the detective smoking, his secretary smoking, the client smoking. They go to the casino to confront the gangster, and everybody in the place is smoking. The doctors are smoking. The dogs and cats are smoking. It's just crazy. We don't see that so much anymore because of a variety of factors, and I don't think that's a result of successful preaching against smoking. I think that's well, basically everybody went and got a vape. That's how that worked out. But that doesn't answer the question, right? None of that answers the question. Then the question is smoking in and of itself a sin? If I go pick up a Marlboro today and light that thing up and put it in my mouth, am I sinning against God? Well, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that smoking is never good for you. It's never a good idea to set something on fire and put the other in your mouth. It's just a bad practice. But I think there is a larger problem associated with smoking, and that is the issue of addiction. And addiction is not an issue that just touches on smoking. It's an issue that touches on all sorts of things. So we're going to look at some Bible here. We're going to look at 1 Corinthians 6. Actually, we're going to look at John 8 first. John 8. Let me do something real quick. Okay. Yeah, we're working. I scoot closer to it or something. I don't know what's going on. Okay. I have two things running, and I can only see one at a time because I don't know what I'm doing. It'd be one thing if I claimed that I knew what I was doing, but I don't. John 8. I'm just going to sit a little closer to this thing because I'm looking at anyway. John 8, verse 36, the Bible do say, if the Son, therefore, let me back up. Verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin, and the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth forever. If the Son, therefore, shall make ye free, ye shall be free indeed. So the default condition of a human being who has been rescued by Jesus Christ, the default condition of that human being is freedom. When Christ comes into your life, he brings with him freedom. He brings with him liberty. He sets the captives free, right? Okay, fine. 1 Corinthians 6. Bible says in verse 12, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. Okay. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. So what you have in 1 Corinthians 6 is one of the great dissertations on the subject of Christian liberty, of what you're allowed to do, what you're free to do. And according to Paul, Paul had liberty. Paul was at liberty. He could do whatever he wanted. But Paul understood some things that I don't think we always think about. Paul understood that liberty, real liberty, always comes with boundaries, not because God wants to put you in a box, but because liberty, if it's misused, becomes slavery. And you see that in every single spot of your life. Misused liberty becomes slavery. And God can free you, and God will free you. And some people go from freedom back into chains that they made themselves. And if you've been around very long, you've seen it. You've seen it over and over and over again. So liberty has its origins in Jesus Christ, and slavery has its origins in sin. Sin enslaves. And the idea in 1 Corinthians 6 is that everything is allowed until it's not. And the point at which it becomes no longer allowed is when that thing becomes the boss of you. People are at liberty until they're not. I had a quote written down here. Liberty always comes with boundaries, because without boundaries, liberty becomes license, and license becomes lasciviousness. That's a quote from Mike Easter. So the issue with smoking, the big issue anyway, is not that you're killing yourself. I mean, that's never a good idea. I'm not in favor of that. The issue is that you are an addict. You have taken the freedom that Jesus Christ bought for you on the cross of Calvary, and you've enslaved yourself to a thing. And that thing, when it plays its tune, you dance, because that's how that works. Now, okay, so Paul lived a life where he abstained from things that he thought might get a foothold in his life. He said, all things are lawful to me, but I will not be brought to the power of any. So he had made a conscious decision, looked at his life, saw, and we're going to get into all the stuff we're going to cover a lot of the stuff that can hook you. I won't say we'll get to all of it, because there's like an endless supply of things that can hook you and to snare you as a Christian. But Paul looked at his life and said, if I'm going to be everything I can for Jesus Christ, I'm going to do everything I want to do for Jesus Christ. If I want to live a life where I'm getting the full benefit of what Christ purchased for me, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to exercise some self-discipline, and I'm going to not to stay saved, but to stay free. It's a thing. Excuse me. And so if something has power over you, okay, so I have liberty to eat jelly donuts. Okay, nothing in the Bible says don't eat jelly donuts. But if eating jelly donuts, or even coffee, or even any number of things, if that thing gets a hook in me, if that thing gets some sort of power over me, where what kind of day I'm having is dictated by what's in this cup, or what kind of day I'm having is dictated by whether or not I took my meds, or what kind of day I'm having is what people said about me on social media, then that thing that you were at liberty to do is now sin for you to do, because it is doing something that you're now engaging in something that you're not allowed to do, because you're not allowed to get hooked. And part of the problem is you have three enemies. I don't know if anybody told you this. You have three enemies. You have the world, you have the flesh, and you have the devil. And the real issue with that is so you live in a world where literally I would say everything, a lot of things are trying to ensnare you. The people that excuse me, the people that make your food are trying to ensnare you. The people that make your phone, they're trying to ensnare you. They want you hooked on their thing, and they will spend millions of dollars in dishonest and duplicitous ways. They will bring. I don't know if you know. I mean, let's talk about the social media stuff. I got whatever I got. I don't know. I got like a thing I write posts on, and I got whatever. I don't have like a Facebook, because that's just CIA spyware. But those guys that own those companies, they have paid millions. They have brought in behavioral specialists that understand how people work and what buttons to push to manipulate you to do this or do that. A few years ago, I was reading about how Facebook had done a thing where if you put up a picture, and I don't know a whole lot about how Facebook works, you put up a picture, and let's say 10 people like it. They put the little thumb thing on there. Facebook had it set up to where you would not get all those notifications at once. So let's say in a 1 hour period, you get 10 people that like your little picture. Facebook would space those notifications out during the course of the whole day. Because if you were off your phone for an hour or off Facebook for an hour, I know some of you have a hard time with that. But if you were there where whatever, and then you came back to it and all 10 of those, you'd look at, oh, look, 10 people like my picture. No, but it would be like one, and then 20 minutes later, one, and then an hour later, one, and then an hour and a half later, one. And it would space out so you would get these notifications, bam, 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 bam. And you would go look at the new notification, and you wouldn't get them all at once, even though they all happened at once. You wouldn't get them all at once. They were doing that to condition you to go to Facebook over and over and over again. They had hired people to train you like a little monkey. So that's why these games that people have on their phones, they are designed to keep you sitting there playing that game. Back in the day, chewing tobacco was a big thing when I was coming up, because I don't know why, it just was. And I tried it once, didn't much care for it. But those guys took and they put little pieces of what's the stuff, insulation in there, like little pieces of sharp stuff in there, like dust, sharp dust. And what that sharp dust would do is it would create microscopic cuts in your lip. So when you dip, the nicotine gets to you that much faster. They were trying to hook you. Okay, so you have the world doing that, right? And then you have the flesh. Your worst enemy is you, because your flesh wants what it wants, and it wants gratification, even at the expense of its own survival. Your flesh will gratify itself, and your flesh will lie to you, and your flesh will set you up for failure. And that's why the Bible says, "Give no occasion to the flesh." You can't trust you. You can't be trusted. And so you have to be careful about the lies you tell yourself about this sort of thing, about whether or not something has power over you. You got to be honest. A dear friend of mine, I don't talk to him a whole lot anymore, but he was, I just consider him, I consider him as friends. Brother Carl Baker up in Beaufort, South Carolina, Calvary Baptist Church. He was pastor there for, I don't know, like 40 years. And the connection between me and Carl Baker is Carl Baker was preaching out on the streets when Doug Fisher got saved. Doug Fisher was preaching when I got saved. Doug Fisher married us, my wife and I. Doug Fisher was my friend, is my friend. I'm sure if I called him up now, he'd answer the phone. So that's connection. But anyway, so Carl Baker went in for some kind of surgery. I remember him telling the story, and if I mangle the details, that's my fault. But the point's still going to be true. So Carl went in to get some surgery, and they put him on these pain pills, and he was doing okay. And he decided he was going to go work on the farm. He was feeling better. He was going to work on the farm. And what he realized, he left the pain pills at the house. He's like, I don't need this. I'm fine. And what he realized is that he kept making excuses to go back by the house where the pain pills were. And he said, what in the world, man? How did I become a junkie? Right? So those pain pills had a grip on him, and he realized it, and he took effective action. But that wasn't something he set out to do, and that wasn't maybe not even something that the people that designed that stuff intended to do. But his flesh is like, we want this, and we will lie to you to get what we want. And that's just how it goes with that sort of thing. So you have the world working against you. You have the flesh working against you. And you have the devil working against you. The Bible says, your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, roameth about, seeking whom he may devour. So the devil's in the active business of devouring people. And one of the ways he can do that is through the things that you get yourself hooked on. That is the nature of the battle right there. So here's the idea. If something is trying to hook you, or it already has hooked you, it is not the end of the world. Everybody has their thing. That doesn't make your thing right, but everybody has their thing. So if something's trying to hook you, it's not the end of the world. But if you know it has an effect on you, if you know it has a hook, if you know it has a pull on you, then what you need to do is you need to get away from it. Because if you continue to go down, you continue to imbibe in that thing that has a hook on you. First of all, the hook gets deeper. I mean, that's no, but you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. And also, to continue to do so is sin, because Paul said that he would not engage in things that got a hold over him. because to do so for him would be sin. And if you don't do that, then you're sinning, and you'll never be everything for Jesus that you can be. And as your brother in Christ, I want you to have the best judgment seat of Christ you could have. I want Jesus Christ to get the glory out of your life that he deserves. I want Jesus Christ to get the glory out of my life that I deserve. And to do so requires a certain ruthlessness in dealing with yourself. And you have to understand the nature of the thing that you're fighting. You're fighting yourself sometimes. And that's how it goes. So how do you know if it has its hooks on you? I pointed out this coffee cup. I can honestly say this coffee cup has no power over me. I'm drinking it because it's warm. But if I don't have coffee, I'm not a terrible human being. If I like Cokes. Honestly, if you brought a 24 pack of Cokes in the house, I would drink them back to back until they were gone. But I can also go weeks without having one. That's how I know. That's how I know it doesn't have a hold on me. I knew a guy once, man. His granddad was a he was a drunk. That's just how it goes. And his granddad would stop drinking like 2 weeks out of the year or something just to prove he could. Anyway, that's how it goes. Can you drink every day and not be hooked on it? Apparently, I have no idea. But the way you find out if something has its hooks in you is you try to walk away from it. And if your flesh starts to whine and scream and make excuses, then you go, the enemy within has raised its ugly head. And that's how it goes. So sometimes I take a thing that I actually enjoy and I just walk away from it for a while. I just do. I because I'm a workaholic, right? In regards to ministry and maybe other things, I don't know. I will record a bunch of these things and I'll put them out and I'll stagger them to go out a week or so apart. I think a week apart from each other, right? But what you don't know is I've recorded like 5 of them back to back or something, and it looks like I'm doing all this work and I'm just doing like whatever. So during that time, I will walk away because checking every 5 minutes to see how many people are looking through YouTube videos is a thing that can get a hold of you. And I can honestly say that it does not have a hold on me. And I know it doesn't have a hold on me because every once in a while I'll walk away from it to prove that it doesn't have a hold on me. So, so I take a thing that I enjoy and I quit it. And I do a thing, I have a thing that I have liberty to do, and I quit it just to see how much of a fight, how much of a fit my flesh is going to throw. In the South, we say pitch a fit. And even when I was a kid, I grew up speaking English and French, but I'm a Southerner. Louisiana's in the South, whether anybody thinks it is or not. And I felt he pitched a fit, and I never knew if that meant like pitch like a baseball or pitch like you pitch a tent. And even when you say pitch a tent, you didn't throw it anywhere. I don't know. English is weird. But anyway, so if you have for example, we're talking about things that get a hold of you. If you have to have your coffee, or you're a terrible person, if you have to have your coffee, you can't function. Then you might consider the fact that you're hooked. And your best bet is to walk away from it until it no longer has a hold on you. If you're addicted to social media, you need to walk away. Maybe forever, I don't know. Because it has a hook on you. And if you don't occasionally do what Paul does in 1 Corinthians 6, you are never going to be all you can for Jesus Christ. So let's say you do that. Let's say tomorrow you decide, I'm going to stop doing blah. Some of this is habit, but a habit can quickly become an addiction. So then, let's say you are hooked. Not mad at you. You shouldn't be mad at yourself. But we got to deal with it, right? It's like you find out you put on too much weight or something. I look like I'm putting on weight. I think it's just the beard. That's what I'm telling myself. But anyway, so now you've walked away from something. Your flesh is throwing an absolute fit, and you realize I have got a problem in my spiritual life, and I've got to get a hold of it. So then the question becomes, what do you do? Right? And you sit around Jones for a while. I'm going to show you from the scriptures sort of a battle plan to lay out that I think will be a help to you. So we're going to look at Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4. The first step to any problem, the first step to any battle is identifying the enemy. And now you've identified the enemy and the enemy is you, then let's go to work. Ephesians 4. Verse 22. Actually, we're going to back up. Let's see here. Where are we going? Okay, here we go. Verse 17. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth, so henceforth means from here, going forward, from henceforth, in case you know what that word means. Ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk in the vanity of their mind. So the lost person that is walking down the street is walking around in the vanity of their mind. Vanity is a word that means the uselessness, the inconsequence of your mind. Things that are vain, things that are fleeting, things that are passing. According to that verse, most of what goes on in the human head is vain. You're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what you're going to eat next. You're thinking about this girl you met. You're thinking about whatever. It's vain. It's not the sort of thoughts that God would have. They're not productive thoughts. They're very human thoughts, but they're not very productive thoughts. And according to verse 17, that's what most people walk around thinking most of the time. Empty nonsense. And you can prove this. The internet has given us the ability to prove this. Look at what most people put on their social media stuff. Look at what most people put on the internet, and you will see that most of it is not worth, I would say it's not worth the paper it's printed on, but it's not printed on paper anymore so much. It's worthless. It's vain. Verse 18. Having their understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart. So you have vain people that are walking around that are alienated from the life of God, and they're ignorant of their true condition because of the blindness of their heart. They do not know how bad they have. They're not aware of what kind of how much trouble they really are in. And if you don't think that's true, go do some witnessing. Go talk to some people about Jesus and listen to what they say. The Bible says most every man will proclaim his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find. People think they're doing okay, and they're not. They've offended God. They're rebels against God, and they think they're doing okay. And that's how it is because the Bible says that the blindness of the heart. You find out in another place in the Bible that the God of this world has blinded the minds of them that believe not. And so it's hard for a man to see his real condition because he's working against his own self-interest. He's working against his own nature to do so. I'm getting way off topic. I'm going someplace with this. Who being past feeling have given themselves over to lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. So you have people here, starting in verse 17, that walk around the vanity of their mind, and they're ignorant and they're blind. And because they're ignorant and they're blind, they don't really feel things like they should. There's an unnatural desensitivity to things they should be sensitive to, and that shows up in a lot of different ways. And so to make up for that desensitivity, they overdo their appetites. I'm trying to be discreet. A lot of the problems that people get in, with sexual sins is they have engaged in things that they shouldn't have engaged in, and they have now become desensitized to the thrill and the pleasure that they got from it before, and so they go to the next level, and they go to the next thing and the next thing, and pretty soon you're out in a place that you can't even recognize yourself, and you are just running around in the vanity of your mind seeking your gratification. Work all uncleanness with greediness. Okay, so that's the picture, the snapshot the Apostle Paul gives to the church in Ephesus about what human beings are really like. Okay, lost humanity, walking around in the dark, lost, alienated from God, separated from God by their sins. That's everybody. That's almost everybody you pass on the street. When you learn to see people that way, you will have compassion on them, and you will feel moved to get the gospel to them. But that's another sermon for another time. So verse 20 says, but ye have not so learned Christ. So he lays that condition out. He lays that situation out. And he says, but you are in a different category. You have learned something that these people in verse 17, 18, and 19 don't know yet. You've learned something. You've learned Christ. If so be that you have heard him and have been taught by him as the truth is in Jesus Christ. So if you really are saved, right? That ye put off concerning the former conversation the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. So you have an old man that is still around. Man, this is cold now. You have an old man that's still around, and he still wants his way. I mean, you don't have to be alive very long to figure that out. But the Bible tells you to take that old man and put him off. But you don't just put off the old man and you be renewed in the spirit of your mind, then and that you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. An example that he gives of how to put off the old man is in verse 25. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. So, you have this old man and this old life, and this old man, this old life is prone to slavery, will actively seek out slavery if it means he can get his gratification. And that old man will actively plot against the new man. That old man will actively plot to get his way. So what you have to do, you have to put him off. And if all you do is put him off, the people say nature abhors a vacuum. If you just put him off, something else is going to fill his place. So it's not enough to just say, well, I'm going to stop whatever. You have to replace it with something else. Look at the verse. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor. So you put away lying, and you replace lying with truth. And you speak the truth to everybody, including yourself. The first person you will lie to is yourself. This is how it goes. So you take the thing you're doing, and you put it away, and you replace it with something else. You replace it with something that God ordains. And you have to actively do that. I mean, how many people have you ever seen that quit smoking and all of a sudden gained 40 pounds? Because they replaced smoking with eating. Just, that's what they did. My dad, when he quit drinking, I forget what year this was, and he immediately put on a bunch of weight. And I was like, he was kind of a scrawny thing, and then he ballooned up. And I asked him about that. He said, that's because I haven't had a solid meal since like 1985. He's been drinking all my calories. So when he quit drinking, he started eating food and he put on a bunch of weight. And that's how that goes. But the other counterpart of that is Colossians 3. So if you want like step one, okay, step one of the victory in this sort of thing is you put off the old man, you put off with his habits and his lyings and those sort of thing, and you put on the new man created in Christ Jesus. And the practical way you start doing that, I'm not talking about a 12-step program. I'm talking about a one-step program. And step one is that you tell the truth. Radical concept. Truth has its own power. Truth has its own life. And that's how you get out of the pit. Now, part of that speaking the truth to every man, I said including yourself, is you have to be realistic and true to yourself about what the trouble you got yourself into. The fact that you've got this thing in your life that shouldn't be there, and you put it away, and you replace it with the truth. And the truth is, you don't need that stuff. The truth is, that stuff's not good for you. The truth is, that stuff's killing you. Spiritually, physically, whatever. Killing relationships, killing whatever. That's how it works. But wait, there's more. Colossians, 3. I found Colossians and I just stopped looking. Colossians 3, the Bible says in verse, excuse me. Let's back up here. Okay. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth: fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Now, there's a lot in that verse. You could take every single one of those things that are listed. You could just pull them apart and look at what it means and where it fits, and we're not doing that. For which thing's sake, all that list, The wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, in the which ye also walked some time when ye lived in them. So there was a time in your past in which you lived in fornication and uncleanness and inordinate affection and evil concupiscence and covetousness and idolatry. That was your old life, right? I mean, that's how it works. That's what people are. Okay. Uh, in which you also walked some time when you lived in them, but now you also put off all these. So there's a list of things you should stop doing. Okay. And now you also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. Verse 9 is very interesting. It says, lie not one to another, seeing that you've put off the old man with his deeds. So the mark of the old man is lies. The mark of the old man is deception, not just lying to your wife about what you're doing on the internet, lying to yourself about what you're doing on the internet, lying to yourself about how you're spending your time, lying to yourself about what your priorities are. That's the mark of the old man, is lies. And the way you defeat the old man is with truth. Lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in the knowledge of the image of him that created him. So the idea is there are things that you put off, and then there are things you put on, and there are things that there are deeds that you stop, and there are deeds that you replace them with. Excuse me. I'll give you an example. This is not in my notes, but Ephesians 5. Be therefore followers of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also has loved us, and hath given himself for us an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness and covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish jesting, or nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. So apparently you can take a good chunk of your sin problems, your addiction problem, and you can replace it with truth. And the things that aren't handled by truth, the things that can evade truth or stand up to truth or whatever the word is I'm trying to look for, apparently the way to the secondary wave is the giving of thanks. So if you're honest and you're thankful, you got it on the run. But there's more. Because if it was just a matter, I mean, I'm not talking about like, man, I get kind of cranky when I don't have my coffee. I'm going to finish drinking this, but man, it's colder than a well digger's ankles, man. What in the world? It's, there are levels of things that have a grip on you. And some things have a stronger hold than I never got hooked on smoking. I don't know why everybody when I grew up smoked. I mean, I worked on a tobacco farm for 3 years. I don't know. I don't know how I missed it. But I still wasn't one of the cool kids. Even back then, I wasn't one of the cool kids. But that from what I understand, I mean, my partner Darnell G. Robinson, the legendary Darnell G. Robinson, he came out of a drug culture. He was a dealer, and he said that crack was easier to quit than cigarettes. And I said, how in the world can that be? Because you see people that are doing crack, they're just laying on the ground, their own filth. I'm thinking that's a pretty deep picture. And he said smoking is harder to quit than cigarettes. He said because you can buy cigarettes everywhere and you can't buy crack just anywhere. So it's, availability. But so there's levels, and so there's times where you can say, okay, I'm going to walk away from this coffee for a few days, and if it turns out that my body starts throwing a fit, then I'm going to tell my flesh to shut up, and we're going to do what's right. And I'm going to stay away from this coffee as long as I need to make sure it is not a problem in my life. I'm going to stay away from it until my body quits yelling at me about it. Because I'm going to make my body mine. I'm going to bring my body into subjection for the glory of God and for the cause of the ministry. Some things are that way. Some things you can just walk away from. Some stuff, though, it's got deep hooks, and to get rid of it, I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. Whatever your addiction is, whatever your issue is, whatever your thing is, it's not God's will that you simply abstain from it forever. I talk about this with homosexuality. God's will for the homosexual is not just that the homosexual gets saved. All that's, Lord is not willing that any should perish, but that all men come to repentance. I think sometimes when I quote these verses, I've said them so many times, I just fly through them, and I need to slow it down so people can actually hear what I'm saying. The Lord is not willing that any should perish, but that all men come to repentance. So God's will for the homosexual is that he gets saved. And if the man gets saved and he continues to live, and he decides to abstain from homosexual behavior, and he decides he's going to live the rest of his life as a celibate homosexual, he's not getting the full victory that God wants for him. I don't know any other way to say it. God's desire in delivering a man is he not only delivers a man from that sin, but he delivers a man from the power of that sin, that he breaks the hold that sin has on a man's life. The idea is not that you just quit. You still have all these urges, and you just don't indulge in them. I mean, it's better than nothing. But ultimately, the goal is that you not have those urges anymore. The ultimate goal is that you have proper affections, not inordinate affections, what it talked about in the verse. And that, friend, is where the battle can get really pretty rough. And I'm not making light of your situation. I'm not making light of my situation, whatever it is. That's where the battle can get very intense, and very personal, and very real. So what do you do? What do you do when just stopping it enough? What do you do when that thing has such a hard grip on you? You should do this either way, but I'm using the really hard stuff as an example because people will say, "Well, I quit drinking coffee and we're good." Okay, then you're good. You proved that it was a thing and you broke its power over you. Good for you, man. Good on you. I'm on your side. If there are things that are part of your life and part of your habits and part of your appetites, and those things are a little hard to walk away from, so then the question becomes, what do I do? What do I do? Romans 6. There are people that stop things on their own. There are lost people that stop things on their own. One of my issues, you have Alcoholics Anonymous and groups like that, and one of those issues is that I have with those groups is they don't. I get why they're this way because they don't have the power that I'm going to be showing you here in Romans 6. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I know they acknowledge a higher power, and I'm not against those guys. I think it's better to dry out than not dry out. I'm not against those guys. But what they're proposing is kind of a band-aid to a much larger problem, which is why they tell their people, for the rest of your life, you are going to be an addict. What kind of victory is that? Like, if I really enjoyed getting liquored up, and I knew that I couldn't because of whatever. I was watching a thing the other day about Willie Nelson, and Willie Nelson just went from booze to pot, and it's just all he did. He's still an addict. Another sermon for another time. But if all let's say I really liked getting liquored up, and so now you're telling me that I shouldn't get liquored up. Okay, fine, but I'm still going to want to get liquored up. So I'm just going to be cranky for the rest of my life. What kind of deal is that? I'm always going to be this thing that I was 40 years ago. If a man is sober for 40 years, I'm going to say he broke the chain that he had around him. And I'm not saying he couldn't pick it back up tomorrow and make that chain right back like it was. But what I'm saying is that what God offers the Christian through the gospel of Jesus Christ is so much larger than you just turning over a new leaf. It's so much bigger than you just deciding in yourself you're not going to do something anymore. But to get that sort of victory, you're not going to be able to get that victory on your own. So you're going to have to call in some outside help. And fortunately, help is available. Romans 6. Let's see here. Where are we going to stop here? We're going to start here. For if we have been, verse 5, for if we've been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. So in one sense of the word, the old man that you struggle with is a defeated foe. And yet here he is. It's one of the weird things about the Christian life is that you fight a defeated foe in your flesh, and you fight a defeated foe in the devil, and you fight a defeated foe in the world. They've already lost, and yet they still scramble on. Yet they're already lost, but they're still clawing and scratching. For he that is dead is freed from sin. Now, if we be dead with Christ, we believe we shall live with him, knowing that Christ, being raised from the dead, dieth no more. Death hath no more dominion over him. For in that he died unto sin once, but in that he liveth unto God. Likewise, reckon ye also yourselves to be dead indeed unto sin, but alive unto God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So, your sin Jesus Christ died for. Your sin Jesus Christ paid for. The man that committed those sins, the old man, died on the cross with him. So the battle you're fighting is very strange because it's, like I said, it's against foes that have already been defeated, but here we are. Bible told us, we covered these verses a minute ago, speak the truth and how truth dismantles a lot of these issues. So if you look yourself in the mirror, excuse me, you look at yourself in the mirror every day and you say, well, AA says I'm an addict, and AA says I have this problem, and AA says whatever, and you're going to look yourself in the mirror every day and say, I'm an addict and this is how it is, then that's not a victorious life. If you look in the mirror every day and say, Jesus Christ has given me power over this thing, I just need to get my brain around that and find some way to actually live that way. Live like I really am. I really am saved. All my sins really were paid for in Calvary. The handwriting of ordinance that's against me really was taken out of the way when I accepted Christ. So now the struggle is to live that way. And by living the truth, by saying the truth and living the truth and going to God for help, you can eventually slay those appetites created by the things you've wrapped yourself around. I remember when I quit drinking, and I don't know if I'd say I was addicted. I do know that my hands shook a lot when I didn't drink for like years and years and years, but I made up for it with enthusiasm. I mean, I threw myself fully and wholly into getting liquored up, and so because of that, um, anyway, what I was saying is, I remember when I quit drinking. I don't remember when I quit wanting to drink. I just looked up one day and it was gone. And so what I would do is I would find other things to do. What I did is I go preach. I know a guy. He's a missionary in overseas, and he was a heroin addict, I believe, the way the story goes. And he got saved, and he still wanted to do heroin. I mean, why not, right? And I mean, I guess I'm assuming the heroin's a lot of fun. People seem to do it, and they seem to, other than laying around your own filth, seems to be quite a time. But when he would get the urge to shoot up, he would read his Bible. And as a result of that, not only did he quit wanting to shoot up, but he became quite the Bible scholar. I knew another guy that when his situation was, he would play with his grandkids. He would do something that was right and something that God approved of as a replacement for the thing that he wanted to do. And he would go to God and he would confess his appetites as sin. Lord, I want to do this thing that I know you don't want me to do. And it's sin, and I'm sorry, and will you please help me? And he did that again and again and again. And one day, he realized he didn't have to do it as often. And one day, he realized that thing had been put to bed. We're going to look at one more place, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. I think this thing's still recording. I have no idea. I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, should there be like something? I don't know. So if you don't see that my ugly face, you'll know what happened. You'll know that Michael once again was outsmarted by a piece of equipment. 1 Corinthians 16. I'm assuming there's a 1 Corinthians 16. I can't seem to find it. 1 Corinthians, that's 2 Corinthians. Back up. 15, verse 16. There we go. There is an addiction available to you that is perfectly legal, perfectly right, perfectly approved by God. And it is found in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 15. I beseech you, brethren, You know the house of Stephanus, that is the first fruits of Achaia, and that they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. If you're going to get hooked on something, get hooked on your Bible, get hooked on church, get hooked on giving, get hooked on witnessing, get hooked on street preaching. And if you're looking for a venue to do those things, if you're in the South Georgia, North Florida area, I am not that hard to find, and we always need the help. So if you want to do something yourself, man, to get your brain off whatever it is you're struggling with, do something for Jesus Christ. Avail yourself of the victory that Jesus Christ has already won for you on the cross of Calvary, and do something for Jesus Christ before it is everlasting too late. Okay? Thank you, and this is Michael. This has been the Street Preachers Corner podcast, and we will see you on the other side. Oh, really? Great. That worked out well.